First and foremost, today's video definitely contains spoilers, so if you haven't finished Final Fantasy VII Remake yet, I highly recommend that you do so before watching this video. And secondly, going forward, I want to have more guests on here talking about various views on the Final Fantasy VII Remake's ending. So this is hopefully the first of very many discussion videos with various community members talking about how they felt about the ending. So I'm going to have some people on here who hate it, and I'm going to have some people on here who love it. And the idea is to give you various perspectives on how the community feels about it. So I really hope you'll look forward to it. With that out of the way, let's get started. Hello everybody, it's the Night Sky Prince, and today I am joined by a very special guest. We're going to be talking about the ending today of Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I am joined by VerryFinny. Say hello.
Hello.
So this ending has been quite controversial. Some people absolutely love it, some people absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
It just really depends on what side of the bed that you woke up on the day that you beat the game.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, so first of all, as you guys all know, for me to be completely transparent, I kind of had mixed feelings on the ending. It looks like it could go some interesting places, but at the same time, introducing stuff like multiverse theory potentially with Zack happening and all that stuff, and then the arbiters of fate and timelines, and it does kind of worry me for where the next part is going to go, and we know that the next part isn't going to be purely just a remake. So Finny, I want to ask you, what was your thoughts on the ending? What do you like? What do you love? And what do you hate about it?
So I'm kind of like you, where I was on the fence about the ending, mixed feelings, because the ending did not feel very earned at all. It kind of just was like a gut punch. It's just like, why go in this direction of like multi-universe and some really convoluted writing? I mean, I know I'm going to get attacked for saying this, but it felt like I was jumping into a Kingdom Hearts story, especially with that big villain that we fought, that big whisper villain. And it's hard to see where it's going to go. And I get like they want to tell a fresh look on an old story, but it's like becoming so different where it's kind of losing what made the original special to begin with. So you play like chapters 1 through 16 and it's very faithful, and even parts of 17. And then all of a sudden there's this switch and it really can't be explained. I guess it's just, to leave you shocked. It's that shock value ending they wanted. I'm shocked. Okay. Not in a good way, but.
Right. So I think that the intention behind the scene, or behind everything that happened in the later half of chapter 17 and pretty much almost everything of 18, I think what they wanted to do was to create buzz. I think that they wanted us to play...
they did.
Yeah, they did. I think that they wanted us to play this first Final Fantasy VII Remake game, and then they know that it's going to be like, let's just say arbitrarily 2.5 years maybe, until the next game comes out. That's probably being optimistic. Might be 3 or 4. We're hoping that it will be about 2 or 3 years. They're going to have a lot of time in between this game and the next one. And so it honestly just feels like they needed something to keep fans talking and to keep them speculating and theory crafting and stuff to carry them over into the next game. And I know that Nomada has a lot of experience with doing that. And he does that in his own way with the Kingdom Hearts series, where he creates very provocative secret movies that make people really wonder what's happening. You've seen like the one with Yozora and all that other stuff. So he has a lot of experience with that. And I think that he wanted to carry that type of mentality over into this game.
Does this much like convolutedness and craziness equal something good though? Does that always equal good storytelling though? Is it that good to be that confused or that like WTF? Like, I don't think that always equals good buzz to me. But I mean, I think a large majority of the audience seems to like this ending. So maybe we're in the minority here where we're just a little bit concerned where it could go.
Yeah, I would say that the majority of people that I have spoke to do seem to really enjoy the ending for the most part. Me trying to to figure out why they enjoy the ending. I think me as a content creator, especially one in the Final Fantasy community, what I attempt to do is not necessarily agree with what all the popular notions are and the unpopular ones and why people follow them. I just try to understand them, or try to understand the mentality of it. And in doing so, I like to present every person's perspective in my content in some way, in a fashion so that people can know how I feel, know what the opposite side feels, and then sort of decide that for themselves. That's what I attempt to do. From what I've been seeing on why people like this ending so much, for those who do like it, first of all, from a visual and audio standpoint, man, it's beautiful, and that version of One Winged Angel is banging.
Yeah, best soundtrack of the year. I can already see it. Okay, we're still in the mix of 2020, but I don't think anything's going to top this.
Yeah, this was probably one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. Maybe only pretty much rivals like how I feel about Nier Automata, which is like also one of my favorite OSTs of all times. But I can definitely understand that, and I understand that that they're looking forward to open up possibilities within VII's universe and make all these different things happen. So that stuff is cool, and I'm totally fine with that. You know, I've been very pro change with the remake, but the thing that sort of worries me is how deep will they go down the multiverse route?
Yeah.
Will it ever be at the point where we have like two Clouds or two Tifas because there's two different universes that were created from defeating the Watchmen or Arbiters of Fate as they're called now? Or like, what is that? Like, what is the best case scenario with the multiverse is what I'm trying to figure out. And like,
I feel like the best case is just to give the fans what they want. They want more Zack. They want more Aerith. If you can create another universe where they can both live happily ever after, then fans will be pleased. They'll be happy with that.
Yeah, I almost thought like, will they create like a Crisis Core 2 almost? Like just like sort of like a non-canon like other timeline? Because we see that like comic books do this type of thing all the time, where they create like a whole mini series on like what if this and this didn't happen, and that becomes like its own spin-off series. So I always thought like, or I've been thinking a lot with regards to this ending and thinking like, oh, maybe they'll go that route where they create like this whole sub-series just for Zack, and it would be like, what if Zack didn't die?
But I wonder if they'll like, will it be a separate thing and we'll know that this is a separate alternate situation, or will they mix it in with the main game, kind of like what they did with the series Lost, where you see a bunch of like flash forwards, flashbacks, flash sideways constantly throughout the episodes of this characters? Like, will that be a constant thing in the main game, like a part 2? You constantly see Zack in its alternate timeline and you trying to make sense of it as you're playing the game with Cloud. Like, kind of wonder what they're going to do with that.
So if they were to go that direction, what I would actually end up doing would be to maybe make it something like a mobile game, or even like a short DLC where the ending allows you to just kind of imagine where the rest of that timeline goes.
Kind of like episode Ignis.
Right. And that was actually brilliant. I felt like episode Ignis like really gave that whole wholesome in a way. It gave you that feeling that there was this universe where Noctis was okay and everything ended in a way that felt right. But
no, I'm always against alternate universe, alternate ending scenarios, because to me, it just seems like it just defeats the purpose of the ending you want to tell, that the true ending, because then fans will always be divided about what the true ending is.
No, you're absolutely right, though.
That's my issue with it.
That, and it kind of undermines the canon ending, don't you feel?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know if they would ever do that, but that's just one of the possible things that I can think of, where the multiverse doesn't end up just going off the hinges and then you have multiple versions of the same character communicating across different universes, which is very possible. And so I think a lot of people wonder, or I don't know if they don't think about that, if that's not something that would concern them or undervalue the story for them. I'm an Aerith fan, and I know her place in the story, and knowing what it means for her to die. And also, that's the case too with Zack. It doesn't become Final Fantasy VII anymore without those pivotal moments.
It can't. It's not possible because the characters
Right.
like Cloud depend on it. That's the whole part of their character art. That's how they grow to be who they are. So it's hard to imagine them like if Zach lives, Cloud can't be who he is today. Cloud wouldn't be hanging out with Tifa and Avalanche. That would never happen. Like things would just never work out.
Right.
That happened in the original.
And so a lot of those things like the core theme of identity sort of get undermined. And I think what a lot of people are sort of missing when they see people who sort of did not like the ending, there's this assumption that you don't like change or you wanted
Which is not true.
You wanted it to end just like the original, and all that stuff is just definitely not true. In fact, so the way that I would have personally ended the game, and again, this would be like a brand new ending in itself. I would have made Rosh a bigger character, and I would have started him out as a third class soldier, and maybe even gave motivation to get him promoted to first if he was able to stop Avalanche. So then you would have had some motivations within Shinra. You would have gotten to know Soldier inside a little bit better. And then from there, I would have souped Rosh up, and I would have made him the final boss of the game. And from there, you would have like a very, very huge struggle with Rosh. I'm talking about Rosh in his like final form would be completely like devastating and able to like annihilate you. And the whole point,
I like that.
Yeah, and the whole point of this ending would be like if this guy was just, you know, some lame generic offshoot experiment. What is Sephiroth like? Who's considered to be like the ultimate being, right?
Mm-hmm. I like that. You know, it's funny that you say his motivation would be, you know, to get promoted from third class to second class, take care of Avalanche. That was actually a theory of mine. We think alike.
Yeah, we do.
But it didn't turn out that way. Poor Roche, he was gone by pretty early on in the game. I was kind of surprised with how little they used him.
Yeah, actually, he felt very underutilized. Alternatively, though, I feel like they're going to bring him back in the second part.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I feel like he's going to end up playing a bigger role. And I think we're going to learn a little bit more about him. I really, I actually kind of like this character in like the brief segment that we've seen of him. Yeah, that being said, a majority.
I like your ending idea. That would have been fun. That would have been great because I just felt like we shouldn't have encountered Sephiroth at all because, you know, it leaves a little room to wonder what's it like to fight Sephiroth in the remake. Well, we already fought him. I mean, we'll have to face him again, but we already fought the baddest baddie in the game. So every time we encounter another villain or encounter like Shinra, it's not gonna feel as powerful. And I was really devastated. Like I was crying in my original playthrough when I saw Rufus, you know, after the whole chapter 18, they're showing him, you know, with the rest of the Shinra heads. And I was just kind of heartbroken because he's already diminished. Like we already know they go on to learn more about Sephiroth and hunt him down, but it's a gradual thing, and Shinra's still very present. But the way they throw Sephiroth at you right now, I mean, there's no threat. They don't feel like a threat anymore. They just really don't, to me.
Right. Oh, they more or less say that too. They more or less say.
Well, yeah, I think Aerith says that.
Yeah, Aerith actually very.
Sephiroth is the biggest bad guy. We gotta go after him.
Everyone, I love her Aerith impression. It's so spot on, right? But yeah, it's like, it feels like they've sort of been removed as a threat to focus on Sephiroth, which I totally get, because at this stage of the game, of the original game, you begin to move toward Sephiroth being that villain, the overarching villain. Because in this arc, right after the escape from Midgar, Cloud is like, Sephiroth is still alive out there. And so that's sort of when the pursuit of him does begin. So I think that...
Yeah, but there's also this like haunting presence where you never like, I mean, you see him like through Genova, but like you slowly learn about him in his past. He's ever present, but you don't see him. So it kind of just like builds up this evilness, and it's just like when you finally encounter it, it just feels so rewarding and so earned. But it happens already. It's just kind of like I'm trying to understand where the tone of the next game's gonna go. It's already gonna be focused on Sephiroth the whole time. Is that gonna get boring?
So my biggest concern is who is going to be the main antagonist of the second part.
What if it's still Sephiroth?
of the final that's where I actually get kind of curious, right? Because I start to think, are they going to do another Sephiroth fight? But how do you, from like a spectacle perspective, how do you actually top that fight? Because in terms of
I don't know.
Right, in terms of like being a set piece, like I can think of how they could top that fight, but I think that they could only get away with doing that once. And then,
there's more than one part coming after this. So
there is at the very least 3 parts.
Yeah.
That's just the very safest assumption. There's at the least 3, but a lot of people can imagine 4 or 5. So I think where most of my concerns come from is that what are you going to do for the boss fight in the games that are not the final one? Because
Genova Sephiroth. This is going to be really repetitive boss fights. Or are they going to introduce a whole nother alien villain that we don't know of? Completely new.
They totally could.
It's going to be Genesis. No, I'm kidding.
You joke, but that's honestly not that unreasonable to imagine. I could genuinely see Genesis being the villain in the second part. Apparently there's a reference to him in Hojo's lab where he's talking about S cells or G cells, something similar to that. And so people are saying that that's a reference to Genesis and all the events from Crisis Core. And so I'm thinking like, oh man, so are they gonna bring back Genesis and just kind of have him be the main villain for
maybe he's the boss fight for the next part? Because I was thinking it could be Genova, but I mean we just fought Genova. I mean we fought Genova and we fought Sephiroth all in part 1, and
just a form of Genova would seem like a tremendous step down from what we just did.
Yeah,
it would seem like a de-escalation, which is something that they can't do. And so in order
how can they top it?
So
I don't know.
Right. So like, how do you top the very top? And that's sort of the problem. And they also referenced a lot of stuff that I feel like it seems more like it should have been like game 3, assuming that the third game would be where it would end. Let's just assume that this is a trilogy arbitrarily.
You're talking about the visions?
No, I mean,
or just the way they shot this Sephiroth cloud fight.
Yeah, just like the way that they shot this Sephiroth cloud fight, which, by the way, as a fight, it was an awesome fight.
Oh, it was.
Which also kind of has me in a weird way concerned. Not concerned because like I'm not complaining that it was awesome in that sense. Don't get me wrong. I'm just thinking like, how do you go and step that up and then keep stepping that up? And
exactly. That is a big concern I have.
Coherent. And I think that a lot of people also interpret that necessarily as being like negative on the ending or cynical about the future. But honestly, I think we just have some concerns.
I mean, when you have this much passion about this game, it's only natural to have concerns about certain changes. Like I all for change, don't get me wrong, because I know if you complain at all, like, you know, you might get branded as a hater and you don't like change. I love the changes. I love the more Johnny. I like the way we learned about Avalanche. But I mean, when you change something and it changes like the basic bones of the story, it's a little concerning. It's just, how are they going to top what they already did?
Yeah, so for me, I think, and change like you said is great. I think I liked like maybe 99% of all the changes that we've seen so far when playing the game. All of the stuff about the novel side characters and stuff being added in.
Yes, that's I love that.
That stuff was super interesting. Like the side quest about Kyrie and learning about that character, and a lot of like lore based stuff from VII being in there, and all these other changes and stuff. I thought that was all fine. So change is something that is not necessarily in an objective sense good or bad. It just depends on what the change and the additions are. And I am by no means a purist. I was one of the people who was pro action combat, which was I made videos on that. You should see the dislike ratios on them. It's incredible. I made videos on basically why I was pro episodic and all these other things. And I think what sort of worries me about some of these changes when you go into different timelines and multiverses and things like that, what concerns me is more along the lines of where does so much change happen to the core themes of Final Fantasy VII that
it becomes lost.
Right, that you almost are just better off making another game called Final Fantasy 16, right? And so I think that there is so much room for change, and that change is awesome and fantastic, and for the most part has made Final Fantasy VII Remake off to a better start to be a better story. At the same time though, this stuff kind of worries me because if they go too far off in the direction thematically that it changes and it no longer carries all the exact same messages as FF7, because once you start adding like destiny and fate into things, which for various other reasons that I can't get into, once you start adding those things into Final Fantasy VII, which is like a whole video essay on its own, it just kind of, it gets weird.
Yeah, it loses its identity.
Yeah, and so I want new stuff in FF7 that still matches.
I wanted to enrich what makes the original so special, not take away what makes it special and make it to something new.
Right.
Maybe that's just wishful thinking.
Right, but a lot of people think, and for the most part, I'm sort of thinking along this line too. I think that Game 2 is mostly going to play out as a faithful remake for like at least 80 to 90% of it. Or
and then the end will switch. No.
Right. Well, no, that's basically what I'm thinking actually, is that like, let's say 80 to 90% of Game 2 will be a remake, just like the first game, basically, where for the most part, it's a remake with a bunch of additions and fleshing out. And then I think that you're going to get to whatever Game 2's equivalent of Chapter 17 was, or is, and then that's when you're going to get a little bit more of that whole bait and switch, and things are going to play out differently.
Now, where do you think Part 2 will end?
If they want Part 2, if they want this game to be a trilogy, which is what I think that they want, then I would say that Part 2 almost has to end with Aerith or where she would die.
Yeah, but see, now since Chapter 17 and 18, I just got this gut feeling she's not going to die the way that we thought. And that kind of worries me because I feel like eventually she will die, but it'll be like some self-sacrifice later on at the very end or something. I feel like that death is so important for character motivation that if they change it, I'm just kind of speechless. I wouldn't even know where to go from there.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. And then there's a lot of worries about if Aerith will even die, because like they said, the future is no longer set in stone. Now, some people speculate that the future no longer being set in stone means that essentially that the canon FF7 will no longer play out as it does originally. Some people say that it will mostly play out as the original did, and the overarching theme of it will be that you, even if you defeat destiny or defy fate or whatever, there's some things that you can't escape and that you have to deal with. And I kind of like latter half where it's sort of like no matter what you try to do to save Aerith, that you ultimately end up having to deal with her death anyway. And I think that what they may do, I talked about this on a previous podcast, someone threw at me the idea that maybe they'll do a double subversion. So maybe they'll make you think that Aerith is safe, and then at the last moment they'll switch out and then kill her like later. Yeah, and then kill her like later on in like a different place. And so
that might be kind of fun.
Yeah, that'd be very messed up, because you'll have like let your hair down and be like, oh god, I saved her.
I could see them doing that 100%.
Right. At the last second, they're like, nope, you couldn't save her. And then Sephiroth like comes back in and then swoops and kills her. And then the other thing that I almost
want them to make Cloud go through with it this time. I want Sephiroth to mess with them so bad that he actually succeeds. At a different point where you don't see it like it's an accident.
That would be mortifying. That would be mortifying.
I love it. I
Oh.
just like some dark, twisted drama. So
Oh
that's.
my gosh.
I don't think anyone else really wants that, but I do.
You are so sick. this
Come on,
guy
it's exciting.
this guy is sick.
I admit I am.
But then the only other thing, because they seem to have a fixation on subversion here and sort of giving the same shock value that these scenes had originally. The only thing that I can think of that would give that same shock value.
Oh no, you don't say it. I think I know what you're gonna say.
Right. The only thing, the only thing I can think of that really hits home that same exact shock value would be if it was Tifa instead.
No, you can't kill Tifa.
Yeah, most people, like, I think people like people
Wow.
like they take out like their torches as soon as I mention that, but I'm just like, hey,
I can't. Oh man,
they-
the internet would explode.
they stabbed Barrett.
See, I was okay with that because I'm like, okay, he's gonna be severely injured going into part 2. That's exciting. That's new. But nope, he's fine. The Whisper protect him.
Yeah, and that's actually another thing too, is that these whispers can heal. And so the whispers are like, apparently they're from the planet themselves, and they help ensure that the planet's will is essentially maintained. So my sort of curiosity with that is that they are from the planet, and it seems like Aerith is also bewildered by them. And then later on, I guess she sort of knows who they are. And then,
Just because.
And then there's the scene where she sort of touches Nanaki. At this point, he's known as Red 13. She touches him, and he sort of has like this staticky thing happen to him. It almost reminds me of like of Kingdom Hearts 2 when Sora is getting his memories back. You know how like the screen's like all staticky and like it flashes.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, man, this reminds me of like Kingdom Hearts 2. Like
You're not allowed to say that, okay? God, hater, get out.
And that's another thing too. Are these premonitions or are they memories?
Only Nomura knows, and team.
They sort of seem to be more like memories coming back to these characters rather than premonitions, which I guess they could sort of be interpreted as both. But when you think about, like, say Cloud, for example, having that premonition that Aerith dies and like this tear like goes down his eyes, and
that's a good point.
That seemed very interesting to me because at that point he barely knew Aerith. They were just met essentially. But on the other hand, Jesse, who he had known for at least a while at that point, they sort of like, when she died, he didn't really seem terribly he was just he was sad, but he didn't like shed a tear or anything like that. So I think for him to shed a tear, it almost made me feel like, I was like, is it a premonition or is it really a memory that's like coming back to him? And then that's where the whole time traveler theory and all that stuff comes into play.
God, I mean, you gave me more to think about now.
Yeah, and so now I'm like looking through the footage and I'm working on videos and stuff, and I'm thinking, okay, so are these like memories coming back to him? And then so I sort of think when she touches Red, is Red, because Red was like his fangs, he was showing his fangs, so he was ready to snap, and then she touches him, and then the same effect from the premonitions,
It kind of seemed like he was remembering.
he sort of like calms down and remembers like who he is and like where he's at, and maybe that's just because someone petted him and he just needed some pets. I don't know, but
Or maybe Aerith tapped into something.
Yeah,
A memory, and so he was able to realize these are my friends.
That's another thing too, is that maybe Aerith sort of has this power to restore memories from the previous timeline, which would explain why when people have those interactions with her, and not just even the whispers, they also get those same premonitions. In fact, the only three things that seem to be able to give the premonitions are Sephiroth, Aerith, and the Whispers. And what do all three of them have in common under this time traveler theory? And that is that they are basically not from the current time.
It really does make me think. Why are you making me think? It's night. Trying to relax. Do you think there's only one Sephiroth? Then he's just, or are there two Sephiroths? Are there more than one Sephiroth that we're dealing with in part one? I've seen people having debates. Is one a time traveling Sephiroth and the one from the present day, or does he just know his fate? He's just that smart. He's able to see into the future, and that's why he is the way he is. What do you think?
Oh man, that's such a tough thing to pick apart. Primarily because it's really hard to tell. If there are multiple timelines, that implies the existence of multiple Sephiroths. Because if there's multiple everybody else, then there's multiple of him. That would be a very messy situation. In fact, that goes straight into what Xehanort was doing in Kingdom Hearts, was intentionally creating multiple timelines so that he could create the 13 versions of himself by jumping through various points in the past and assembling all those together. So, I mean, if you think about it like that, then it becomes like, there's at the very least two Sephiroths under this multiverse theory. And that's just like, whoa, I don't know if I can deal with that.
I don't know if I can either.
Now, if there's not two Sephiroths and there's just one Sephiroth, that eases my worries a lot. Basically, I would hope at that point there would just be one timeline, and if there is any type of time travel or anything going on like that, we don't have multiverses splitting off of that timeline. If that's the case, then that's where things get like, this is convoluted. But even then, convolution is not my worst fear. My worst fear is going off in a direction that does not feel authentic to the themes and core principles of what FF7 is. Because I think a lot of people focus on the word convoluted as a criticism. There's good stories that are convoluted, and sometimes that's just the way that they have to be presented because they are convoluted by nature, and they're still good if you're able to figure them out. The problem is not necessarily that this is convoluted. It's when it becomes convoluted and then maybe the payoff isn't there. Maybe it is. I mean, we honestly have no idea, and we really won't until the second game comes out. So
the second we start getting trailers, it'll be really telling if we recognize scenes or if it looks vastly different.
It's still going to be Gaia. So I feel like a lot of the places and locations are still going to be there, but the way in which they unfold may be entirely different. So
that's what I'm thinking. Like, I don't think they'll stray too far, or they gonna not go to certain places, but how scenes play out, how this plot's going to play out from now on. That's where things are like. So I genuinely, I don't know. Oh, 'cause I wonder how they're going to deal with that large cast. Like in the first part, they made it so that you're always split up between 3 and 2 characters. But I mean, you're going to have you get Sid, you could get Yuffie, Vincent, if they still go that route.
Right.
So I wonder how are they going to deal with all these extra characters? And I assume Red will be playable in part 2.
So if I'm not mistaken, there's 9 playable characters in Final Fantasy VII, I believe, offhand. And so I try to think that they introduced 4 in this game. I try to imagine them introducing 5 new characters in the next game. And that almost makes me think that may be too much. And they may only try to, because they also have to create new skills and new weapons and stuff for all the current characters. They basically have to add on a whole bunch of new things to keep those characters feeling fresh. And then they also have to create these brand new characters too, from scratch, and then have those in the game. And so I'm wondering if there's going to be some line where they're like, oh man, we're just going to save Yuffie and Vincent for game 3 because we have to add Sid. We have to make Red 13 actually playable. We have to add everybody else. And so...
I mean, I wouldn't mind Vincent and Yuffie being safe for part 3. It gives you something to look forward to, as long as in the end everyone is playable.
Oh, I think that'll definitely happen. I just wonder how they'll go.
But I wonder if, will you ever truly get to choose your party, or is it going to play as part 1 where, they kind of just pick for you. They make the party divide, so your party's already formed. You don't have a choice.
Yeah, that was a very interesting choice, but for the most part, because of the way the story is structured, you're really there was almost never a point in which you actually had all 4 party members anyway.
No, it worked for part 1, but I feel like part 2.
Yeah, but part 2,
they're gonna have to. I don't know. I don't think it's going to work like that.
Yeah, they're going to have to do it entirely different. And then in terms of like the world map too, I'm thinking they'll structure that like Dragon Quest 11, where it's just very big zones.
Yeah, I could see that.
Especially,
I don't mind that.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
I think that's the way to go too, because actual open world, I don't know if they'll do that the same way. I think it'll be a much wider sense of linearity, but it'll still be very much a linear game, I assume. I don't think they'll go too open world with it.
No, I don't think so. I don't think they need to. I don't think the story calls for it. Zones is fine. I think if they try to go open world, I don't know if they would be able to nail it with everything else they have to do.
All right.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. And for my final question, to round this whole discussion off, what are your greatest desires for Final Fantasy VII Remake 2? Let's just call it that.
Ooh, okay. Well, Sid Highwind, of course, he's my favorite character of all time. There's him.
Calm down, Finny. Calm down.
Okay. I mean, just that it doesn't stray too far from the original. I'm most looking forward to, in part 2, is it to remain relatively faithful to the original. And I like change, and I did like most of the change in part 1, but I hope it doesn't stray too far into this multi-universe kind of situation. And I hope they can top the boss that they had for part 1, because how do you already top Genova and Sephiroth?
Right.
That's big concerns, but I gotta have faith. I mean, they did a really good job. I liked most of the chapters 1 through 16 a lot. So I think if they keep doing stuff like that, I won't be too concerned.
Yeah, I feel the same sentiments that you do. I think my biggest concern, like you were saying, is that they'll go full on into that multiverse direction, and it will be really, really messy.
And unrecognizable for 7.
And unrecognizable for what 7 is. So my mentality is that add and change whatever, as long as it keeps within what Final Fantasy VII is supposed to be. Because while I get that people are pro change and they want to see sort of a new story unfold, I also feel at the same time, while I hold those principles of embracing change and seeing new things and embracing a reimagining of the game, there also has to be certain core principles that are obeyed. Otherwise, you end up with the situation where what's the point of even remaking the game versus just doing Final Fantasy 16?
Exactly.
And that's sort of the line that I think that they have to walk more carefully. And I think that they have to be very conscious of what they're doing to not be so far off in a different direction that it's not FF7 anymore, which I still hold on to a lot of faith that they will, because when I was playing this game in particular, there were certain sections, I think really it was with the Sector 5 church. That's when it like really hit me that like, oh my God, I'm playing a 2020 remake of Final Fantasy VII. That's when it like really set in, because the church and everything inside and then leading out in that section.
And then with Eris, when you're walking and she does the same motions with her arms as she's jumping. Dude, that got to me. Do you remember that when she's like jumping in the original? Oh my God.
And like,
it like played so faithful to
her
that.
arms up and that.
Yes.
And that stuff.
Even I felt something for her, and I don't particularly like her very much as a character.
Whoa.
Sorry, I said it. It's okay. You can dislike characters, but still appreciate them.
You can't dislike my queen.
I don't care. I do.
We're gonna fight. We're gonna fight.
Okay, you heard it here first, guys. Me and Prince are gonna fight. Take it to the streets.
You guys, I'm gonna wrap this up because I have to go beat up Finny.
He's gonna lose, but okay.
I probably will lose, but I'm gonna try to beat up Finny. Finny, before we close things out, can you please tell everyone who has enjoyed your appearance here and your lovely Aerith impression where they can find you on YouTube? And you're on Twitch. So if you could tell everybody where they can find you so they can go check out all your great content.
Sure. So I mostly stream Square Enix games, and you can find me on Twitch at VerryFinny. Same as YouTube at VerryFinny. It's relatively new to YouTube, so I don't have much content, but I'm currently uploading my full playthrough of the remake right now. And on Twitter, you can also find me at VerryFinny.
Okay, awesome. And I hope you guys already know who I am, but for those who don't, I'm the
first time hearing about you.
First time, yeah. No one knows who I am. And this has been yet another Ultima discussion video. If you like this video, please be sure to hit that like button, leave a comment below, subscribe, and maybe even hit the bell icon for me. That'd be awesome.
Do it, or I have to beat up Prince.
She'll probably beat me up anyway.
I know.
She's just playing you. All right, everybody, and please leave a comment below telling me about what your greatest hopes and your greatest concerns for Final Fantasy VII Remake 2, or whatever they call it, will be. Until then, I will see you all next time.